Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I would like to describe today's true story filled with horrific and terrible crime. It took place in North Africa, in a country called Algeria. Once in one of the buildings, people around it smelled a rotten, pungent smell which came from one of the apartments. The police arrived after the call from the neighbors, complaining they haven't heard from the neighbors for 2 to 3 days. But they did smell the distinctive rotten odor. There's one thing. If someone reports especially something related to smell, a rotten smell, the first thing that comes into the police mind is a dead body or bodies. Well, they broke the door as the door was locked. When they opened the door, they were surprised that there was no key from the inside, as someone would have locked the door, of course, from the outside and left. As soon as they entered, they found 7 dead bodies, 3 women and 4 children. They were killed brutally and were dismembered. The security men and the police started off with the work. Men from the forensic department arrived, took the fingerprints, and the bodies were taken to the forensic department to reveal any trace or identity of the killer. But there was no use. They found nothing. But they did find a collection of photos torn into small pieces, or in a specific way it could be like a puzzle ready to be solved. They found out that one of the bodies belonged to the owner of the apartment, NASIRA. The second was of her sister, and the third of her friend named Maimouna. The 4 children whose bodies were found were those of Nasira's sister. They wanted to know more about the owner of the apartment, NASIRA, that they have found. She was a divorced lady, so certainly her ex-husband would have been the first suspect. But later they did find out that he was dead from a long period of time. They found out that he had brothers, and one of them had a criminal record, as he was involved in the crime, but he was completely paralyzed after an accident, so definitely it wouldn't be him. They excluded him from the case. They then knew that her ex-husband's uncle could be involved too, but firstly and originally he was not in the city, and secondly it was clear that he didn't have any motive as to commit this heinous crime. When they found out that there was no reason whatsoever or motivation of a subject of doubt, so he was again excluded from the case. The chief of police asked them to try again with the pictures. This was the only thing left. The photos, which resembled a jigsaw puzzle, a huge one, and it was torn so precisely that it was so difficult to mount them up. They had to find people or children who had certain hobby or interest of solving puzzles or games. It took them a week to solve this specific puzzle. The picture here, there was only one picture out of a lot, I would say, and they printed it and modified the image to make it clear enough to find out what was in the picture. They found out that the picture included 4 women and 4 children. The deceased, NASIRA, her sister, children of her sister, and her friend Maimouna. But the 4th girl in the picture was not among the deceased. Therefore, she could have some kind of relation with the information about the owner of the picture. By chance, one of the policemen recognized this girl and said that he has seen this girl previously in one of the police stations. He recalled that he came across her as she was caught in one of the crimes. He didn't remember which one exactly, but he had to go through the data to find out the identity of the girl that he was about to find. She was summoned, he did find out, and she was summoned to the police station for further investigation. She said that she met them in a party and they were filming and taking pictures that day. So she remembered and she said, yes, they did take a photo with me. She said that she did hear that they all died. Whatever information she gave them, she was being very cooperative with the police. It did show that she was honest, and she did give them information that was very substantial that could actually help them find the culprit. As she was giving them more to what she knew, she started saying that there was a man, husband of NASIRA. The police stopped her and explained, we know, he died a long time before. Before years. She said, no, her other husband. Well, the other husband with whom she had a customary marriage, they were friends at first, and they were planning to get married officially. She said that the name of that person was Abbas, and the place he belonged to, she gave them all the information. These were the only two things she knew about him. She knew that he was the only one who brought the video device, or the recording device, and series and movies, and they started watching. So this was what she remembered. Now the investigators went to the city and started searching for Abbas, but there were hundreds. So they started distributing and bringing them in order of age, like from 26 to the 50s, and focused heavily on those who had previous criminal records. It took them more than 3 months. At this point, the police were at the stage of despair. But the coincidence was that one of the policemen said that he knew a man named Abbas. They said, how did he know that person? He said, he is my aunt's son. And this person, Abbas, usually visits the area where the crime took place. He also included that he was a respectable man and did not have any issues. What he meant was that the investigators were searching for someone with criminal records. So he thought that he was unlikely because he didn't have one. He had no criminal records or was never involved in a crime. But he also doubted that this person visits the area every once in a while where the crime took place, and he also had problems and fights with his father. The policeman asked him to summon the man for investigation. But he replied that after the fight, his father expelled him from the house, and they have no idea about his whereabouts. They took the address of his father's house and found out that he did expel him, but after searching the house, they came across a video recorder or a video device, and some of them matched the ones the girl described above. The girl was summoned again for interrogation to ask if this was the same device and similar plays in movies. She answered yes, but still the police had no firm evidence as to if Abbas was the killer. They arrested Abbas after raiding the apartment which he rented out. They found a machete and traces of blood. They grabbed Abbas and questioned to say the whole story and if he was the killer, but he rejected. He said it was impossible. He said he loved them, especially the eldest son, and considered him to be one of his sons. After further interrogation, they asked him why he was not present at the time he knew that his wife and the others were killed. He explained that NASIRA was the reason of the dispute between him and his father, so he went away for a while. Well, after further investigation or interrogation when nothing made sense to what he said, and to the fact that they found a machete and all the evidence were against him, he confessed and confronted that he had killed them. He said that he had a job and was an educated man from a very respectable family. He was married and had a very stable life. But the moment he met NASIRA, his life became a living hell. It turned out to be an unhappy and gloomy life for him. He met her in a wedding, and that was because NASIRA used to sing at wedding ceremonies. Later, they agreed upon a customary marriage when they got to know each other more, and they got married. And then he sold his house, his land, whatever he had. And so just to support and spend on NASIRA's family. He considered her that she was his dream and his future and pictured a perfect life together. Now, when Abbas asked NASIRA to marry him officially, she said that the first thing she said was to divorce his wife, and he did. He divorced his wife and expelled her from the house and sold the house. He continued wasting whatever he had and bought them everything they needed, until he reached the stage that he was left with nothing, not a single dinar. He went to his father's house and asked him for money, but instead his father began to complain and told him how he destroyed his life with his own hands. He lost his occupation, sold his house and land, and got into a verbal altercation. The father here expelled him, and he went back to NASIRA. She asked him to buy drugs and drinks for a party she had organized. He didn't own money, so he had to borrow from his friend. Later, they stayed up all night drinking and taking drugs, till Abbas was completely drunk. When the party was over, he wanted to go back to sleep. But here, NASIRA refused and asked him to leave. When he asked why, she replied that he had to leave forever because before he used to earn money or he used to spend money on them, but now he couldn't cover their expenses, so it was like their relationship was over. At this stage, he realized that what did he do to himself and what point he has reached. He felt miserable. He had the best wife he could imagine and gave up everything for what? While he was standing in a hopeless condition, NASIRA with pity said, "Well, you can go and sleep in the kitchen for tonight." He agreed to do so. The apartment didn't have enough room or enough space. He sat in the kitchen and drank all the liquor from the refrigerator. To remind you, he also had taken drugs, so he reached the stage where he almost lost his consciousness. His eyes fell on a machete on top of the refrigerator while he was drinking. He forgot his pain, his loss, and grief. He had never committed a single crime in his life, but because he thought his life was over, he planned to do so. He entered the living area where NASIRA was sleeping, and she was the first victim he stabbed repeatedly, multiple times. This event woke the children up, so he struck and got rid of them, one after the other, including NASIRA's sister. Maimuna here, she noticed that he was slaughtering, and she tried to get away. But then he grabbed her and pulled her back next to the body and killed her. He went back and continued drinking. He was sitting and looking at the bodies. When he decided to leave, he went back and started hitting the heads or the bodies of the victim, making sure that they all were dead. He left and he locked the door behind him. He went back and hid the machete and went to sleep. When he woke up in the morning, the feeling was that as if he did nothing. But because he did, he decided to commit suicide, but he was hesitant to kill himself. The police had one last fundamental question. At the crime scene, they found tiny pictures torn into pieces. Why would have he done such a thing? He answered he was afraid that they would recognize him through the pictures or the photos. So that's the reason he did so. He confessed and admitted to everything they asked. They also asked him where he hid the keys. They found the keys he had wrapped in a cloth with traces of blood belonging to the victims. They seized the keys, and Abbas' case was on trial and he was sentenced to death. Abbas is still in the prison because Algeria, the last execution took place in Algeria was in 1994, and they have stopped executing people or sentencing people to death after that. I would like to end the story with a quote. When you know you are blessed, and instead of gratitude, try to get more, and thus go astray, darkness is what you'll find, and thus you will lose yourself. I hope you enjoyed this story, and don't forget to subscribe and give a like. Thank you.